In the words of Ecclesiastes, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for dancing and a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. The time of mourning is a complicated time, filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service with a recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Marvin's life with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. Psalm 23, I'll do it first in Hebrew, and then we'll do it together in English on the inside, left-hand side of your program. Mizmor David, Adonai roi lo echsa, binot deshe yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yenahaleni, nafshi yeshovev, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni v'maglei tzedek, leman shemo, gam ki elech beketz almavet, lo hirara, ki ata imadi, shivtecha umishantecha, shivtecha umishantecha, hema yenachamuni, taroch lefanai shulchan, taroch lefanai shulchan, taroch lefanai shulchan, neged zorerai, di shanta vashemen roshi, di shanta vashemen roshi, di shanta vashemen roshi, kosi revaya, achto vachesed, yedefuni, kol yemei chayai, veshavti bevet Adonai, veshavti bevet Adonai, leorech yami. Together in English, on the left-hand side of your program. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God lays me down in green pastures, leads me to still waters, renews my life, guides me in right paths, for that is God's way. Though I walk through a valley as dark as death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You spread a table before me in full view of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup is overflowing. Only goodness and steadfast love shall pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. Psalm 15, which you don't have in your program. A Psalm of David. Lord, who may sojourn in your tent? Who may dwell on your holy mountain? He who lives without blame, who does what is right, and in his heart acknowledges the truth, whose tongue is not given to evil, who has never done harm to his fellow or borne reproach for his acts towards his neighbor, for whom a contemptible man is abhorrent, but who honors those who fear the Lord, who stands by his oath even to his hurt, who has never lent money at interest or accepted a bribe against the innocent. The man who acts thus shall never be shaken. And the poem, Each of Us Has a Name, by Zelda. Each of us has a name, given by God and given by our parents. Each of us has a name, given by our stature and our smile, and given by what we wear. Each of us has a name, given by the mountains and given by our walls. Each of us has a name, given by the stars and given by our neighbors. Each of us has a name, given by our sins and given by our longing. Each of us has a name, given by our enemies and given by our love. Each of us has a name, given by our celebrations and given by our work. Each of us has a name, given by the seasons and given by our blindness. Each of us has a name, given by the sea and given by our death. Judaism teaches us to look for certain qualities to evaluate the life and achievement of a person. One of the most striking statements summarizing these criteria is found in a teaching of Rabbi Shimon in Pirkei Avot, which is a book of the Mishnah, one of the oldest compilations of rabbinic Jewish law. The teaching begins by saying, there are 3 crowns which command the respect of people: the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of kingship. However, Rabbi Shimon adds that these qualities are surpassed by a 4th quality, the crown of a Shem Tov, a good name, excels them all. We might ask, why could this be? In the case of both the priesthood and royalty, the answer seems fairly obvious. A person becomes a priest or a king not through any merit of his own. He reaches those stations through heredity, automatically. Learning Torah is a personal accomplishment and certainly deserves high praise. But Rabbi Shimon would have us understand that learning is not necessarily accompanied by nobility of character. You could be the most learned person in the room, but lack kindness and compassion, the wisdom of the heart. Only in the case of a bearer of a Shem Tov, a good name, do we find outward honor combined with inner worth. The most important life goal that Marvin Winnick had, besides the true crowning jewel, the beloved and amazing family, the beautiful and amazing family that he created with his beloved wife of almost 70 years, Robbie, was to have a good name. This mattered to him more than wealth, power, or awards. Marvin was a thoughtful, kind, and generous man, certainly financially, but especially by cultivating a generosity of spirit and expressing that benevolence through the gifts of his love, his time, and his mentorship. The irony, of course, was that because of all that, he was, and being the living embodiment of a good name, he did not seek out, but became president of several organizations, including here at Tifereth Israel and the Jewish Federation of Greater Des Moines. To Marvin, that good name was not just his goal. It was the true essence of his being and how he tried to be with people in his life, whether casual business acquaintance or his best friend from kindergarten. With Marvin, the person you experienced was who he was, and he would want you to be exactly who you were and who you were meant to be. Marvin cared deeply for his friends and family, continuing and maintaining relationships even from his childhood to the present day. When one of his contemporaries passed away over the last several years, the adult children would usually ask me to call Marvin for additional stories. Marvin would initially be surprised, but you could also tell he was honored. He remembered his friends and their antics as children, as young adults, well, but respectfully. I wonder who I will be able to call now. If you asked Marvin to do something for you, he would do it. It seems that everyone he met, he touched each person's life in a positive way. His friendship and caring crossed generational lines, and so many have memories of how he embodied and lived as a mensch. Marvin had a good sense of humor and certainly enjoyed his cards, bridge, poker, and otherwise. I remember trying to book a lunch with him and Robbie, and I found myself in competition with his standing weekly card games. I lost. But we would eventually settle on something that worked for all of us, of course. Marvin could also be very serious, bright, and was certainly exacting. When he took his time to do something, he wanted to do it well. Marvin would want all the backgrounds that he could think about it. Marvin's carefully considered conclusions could be an exercise in patience for those around him, but it was important for him to have time to mull and process. Robbie eventually learned only a few years ago in a lifetime of loving partnership, instead of asking a question that she maybe wanted an immediate answer for, she would gently offer, "Here's something I want you to think about," and follow up at a later time. The devotion Marvin showed to his family and friends and his strong ethical work ethic was matched in his Jewish life. He, in his own compassionate way, would hope to bring out the careful thoughtfulness he possessed in others. Marvin was proud of his accomplishments as president of Tifereth. He brought women to the pulpit, helped to create lively intellectual discussions, not just here in the Jewish community, but in every community he belonged to. He loved Israel, especially as one who knew a world in which Israel was yet to exist. Israel was precious to him, and certainly something worthy of unflagging support. Marvin would celebrate Rosh Hashanah with his family elsewhere, but always made sure to be back in Des Moines, his lifelong home, to carry the Torah as a past president at Yom Kippur. It was a moment of great pride for him. Marvin brought his legal and CPA mind along when examining the synagogue finances. As president, as a member of our foundation board, and as a congregant, I have heard over the years from treasurers about his thorough questioning prior to the annual meeting and experienced it firsthand. Marvin was very concerned about the legacy he and others were creating for our community so that there would be a future for all of us for many years to come. This week's Parsha is Beshalach, which is from the book of Exodus. It tells the story of Moses and the Israelites' journey from slavery to freedom, from Egypt through the wilderness, in anticipation of reaching the promised land of Israel. In particular, it depicts the travels, often frightening and yet awe-inspiring, of the Israelites led by Moses through the parted Red Sea. In many communities, this upcoming Shabbat is called Shabbat Shirah, Shabbat of Song. Because of the special song, one of the oldest examples of biblical poetry that Moses leads the people in as they move through the sea. The melody is so old that it is called a Mi-Sinai tune, which means from Sinai, meaning in Jewish ethnomusicology, meaning that it has been preserved all these thousands of years and no one knows who first wrote it. In some ways, the melody and how it connects each of us to all Jews, past and present, is more important than the lyrics, which seems fitting for the Winnecks, who don't know lyrics, but we know music. It struck me as significant that this is the week that Marvin will be laid to rest. Marvin, the tape fairy, loved music, and perhaps even that is an understatement. And certainly, as his nickname suggests, he enjoyed sharing the songs that he loved with the people he loved. Over the years, he migrated into CDs, and I am honored to be one of the recipients of the Tape Fairy. That, his honest and caring smile, and his careful consideration when he offered his opinion and listened to yours are just a few things that I will miss about Marvin. Prominently featured music in this week's Torah portion is certainly one way that it is fitting for this finale of Marvin's life symphony. However, there is another aspect of this reading that perhaps even more fits the life that Marvin strove to live. Moses steps in front of the people to lead them through literally uncharted waters, and he leads them in song. It is to this day sung as a call and response when we read the Torah, in an effort to recreate a little bit of the Israelite experience. Moses sings the lines of musical poetry first, and then the Israelites repeat what he has just sung in an accompanying melodic answer. He teaches the Israelites by showing them what to do and then giving them the opportunity to do for themselves. One of Marvin's great skills was as a teacher, but not just a teacher, a mentor. He, of course, excelled at being a mentor at the law firm that bears his name. After he retired, mentoring was still important to him. He just used those finely honed skills in different ways, like his class on horseradish making, at the end of which all the participants, having learned the skills necessary to make horseradish for themselves for Passover the right way, received framed certificates. Marvin was an amazing human, unparalleled in his kindness, his thoughtfulness, and his love. He was who he was, no doubt, but I can imagine, since his talents extended into many arenas, he will be remembered, respected, and cherished by each of us in our own unique memories of him and what he meant to us, to the world. Above all, Marvin succeeded in his aspiration every day of his life. Marvin Winnick wore the crown of a good name, and may those who loved him and cared for him continue to share and teach about his good name, his deeds and generosity, and the example he set for all of us for many years to come. Yehi zichro baruch. May Marvin's memory always be for a blessing. May God comfort his beloved wife, Robbie, his children, Laura and her husband, Martin, Ellen and her husband, Gary, Stephen and his wife, Michelle, his grandchildren, Sarah and John, Michael, Jamie, Jacob, Emma, and Charles, and Sophie and Kelly, his great-grandchildren, Lucy, Ella, Blake, and Lily, his extended family, and his many friends who were like family, and all who knew and loved him. I'll now call up Marvin's son, Steve, to speak first. You can move the mic.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. For those who do not know me, I'm Steve Winnick, son of Marvin and Robbie. Formally, I am Steve Winnick of the Des Moines Winnicks, the few, the mighty, the proud. This is how I have signed off family communications for years. I can do it really quickly. Steve Winnick of the few, the mighty, the proud. Sadly, Des Moines Winnicks are a little bit fewer, and a little bit less mighty today. But we're so proud. Please bear with me. I get very emotional easily when I'm talking about and feeling love, and I'm feeling a lot of love today. So how does one begin to describe a man, the family patriarch, who, like George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, was the richest man in town? There are many layers and facets to my dad's 90 years of life. He cannot be simplified easily, and my sisters and I can only offer a few anecdotes of a very full life. Let's start at the beginning. Dad was born in Des Moines on March 7th, 1933, 6 years before World War II began. And while the country was still in the throes of the Great Depression, his parents, Louis Winnick, my Zadie, Sarah Korn, my Bubby, were immigrants, both born in the old country of Eastern Europe, with Yiddish being their mother tongue. Marvin was the baby of 3, along with brother Alan, AKA Brother Winnick, and sister Janet. Zadie Louie owned a full-service corner grocery store, the Winnick Grocery Store on the east side of town. That grocery store was the foundation of Dad's childhood. His colorful experiences there, working in the grocery store side by side with Brother Winnick and with Zadie Louie at the helm, became family legends. It is where Dad learned to work hard and to play hard. In many ways, he grew up in that store. Dad always looked back at his childhood affectionately and nostalgically, even seeing the fun side of being quarantined for weeks when he caught scarlet fever. Working at the store was a highlight, not a prison camp. He worked with his family, and he learned from his father to be caring and generous with their customers. Zadie Louie always saw the good in people, and that informed Dad greatly throughout his life. His childhood was also when he formed some of his oldest and greatest relationships and friendships. And once you become a friend of Marvin's, he was a supportive friend for life. He became a bar mitzvah at Bethel Jacob. He was active in AZA. He graduated from North High School. He played on the North High tennis team and began his lifelong love of the sport. Rumor has it that it was on the tennis team there when he first introduced the interjection, "Oh, Marvin." After graduating from North High School, he followed in Brother Winnick's footsteps to the University of Iowa, where, like Brother Winnick, he studied accounting, often returning to Des Moines on weekends to work in the store. College was a great time for him. He joined AE Pi fraternity, ultimately becoming fraternity president. He was a strong student. He learned to drink martinis, to play bridge, and his social life was full. Like many of his Jewish peers, he also joined ROTC, which would become instrumental in the next stage in Dad's life story. Most importantly, it was at the University of Iowa in 1952 when Marvin meets young Marilyn young Marilyn Robbie Robinow from Sioux City. They marry in August 1954, nearly 70 years ago, shortly before Marvin would start law school at the University of Iowa College of Law. After 1 year of law school, Dad begins 2 years of service in the United States Air Force to fulfill his ROTC commitment. Captain Marvin Winnick, AKA Sonny Boy, radar controller, stationed in Alamogordo, New Mexico. It's in New Mexico, where Marvin and Robbie became the proud parents of daughter Laura in 1957 at the young ages of 23 and 24. Following the service, Dad returns to law school, where he graduates in 1959. A new lawyer, Dad joins the accounting firm Pete Marwick, where he stays for 1 year, becomes a CPA. He then joins the law firm Swift Brown in 1960, where he stays for the rest of his career, over 45 years. He specialized in tax and estate law and became the leader of the firm's corporate and tax practice, a true lawyer's lawyer. He also was a perennial leader of the firm, serving as managing partner for over 20 years and playing a key role in shaping where the firm is today. Today, the firm's name is Brown Winnick, and it remains one of the largest and top firms in the state. At the same time Dad's career was developing, Mom and Dad's family grew. Ellen was born in 1960, and I followed in 64, 59 years ago. There were 2 family homes over the years, a starter home in West Des Moines, and then our home in Windsor Heights, where my folks lived for more than 40 years, till Robbie finally pulled the plug, or slowly introduced the idea, and they moved to a wonderful condo on Grand Avenue and a winter home in Rancho Mirage, California, outside of Palm Springs. Note a common theme: nearly 70 years in one marriage, more than 45 years at Brown Winnick, 40 plus years in the family home, friends from his childhood. Marvin was a constant. Dad's civic contributions were also significant and very important to him. He was dedicated to the city, and in particular, the Jewish community. He was particularly proud of his contributions to the synagogue and the Jewish Federation. He served as presidents of both. We listed other civic and professional accomplishments in his obituary, which I encourage you to read. While most of his civic involvement received little fanfare, one highlight was when the National Conference of Christians and Jews awarded him its top award at a special ceremony. He was very proud of this. Dad's resume, however, only tells you a little bit about him. There's so much more. Let me highlight a few of the things that I cherished the most. First, his generosity and modesty. Dad is very supportive of others, always puts his money and efforts where his mouth is. Dad did not seek public recognition, and like Zadie Louie, he saw the best in others. I think these traits combined helped make Dad a great leader and trusted advisor. Second, and you're going to hear a lot about this, his love of music. When a Sinatra tune was playing, Dad would sail away. It did not matter that he had heard the song 1,000 times. Music gave him rhythm and dance moves and his youth. Our family had so many favorite records curated by Marvin. I'll underline that, curated by Marvin. My more rock and roll did not generally make it into the family themes. Wide range from Tony Bennett to Mel Torme to Broadway musicals to Nancy Wilson to Ella to Rosemary Clooney to classical, big band jazz. I inherited this gene, and I too sail away. Third, his respective Jewish traditions. Dad was a very proud cultural Jew, Found tremendous comfort and value from Jewish traditions, Jewish thought. He loved Jewish history, intellectual Talmudic discussions. Passover became a national Winnick holiday, where he proudly served as the leader every year with special readings for every topic, and, of course, homemade horseradish. Simple joys, a martini, a well-told joke, a great story, salami and eggs for Sunday breakfast, my mom's pot roast, a really good tennis match, a good apple, a great craps roll, biking with friends, a Hawkeyes victory, a good conversation. Dad also loved and had so many deep friendships. Those who know Robbie know her huge circle of friends. The phone never stops ringing. But Dad was truly an equal. His friends were many and varied. His relationships were deep and gentle. Six, his dedication and affection for his family. Dad had special and different relationships with each of his three children. One constant, he was always there and rooting for you. Dad's commitment to his family began, I think, with his great respect for his parents and siblings. For example, growing up, we spent each Friday Shabbat dinner with my grandparents. Yes, my bubby's matzo ball soup was good, but this tradition was born from respect and love. He took care of my grandparents in their old age. Lastly, his partnership with my mother. What a partnership. Dad could not have been the man he was. Without my mother could not have been the person she is without my dad. Marvin and Robbie. Robbie and Marv. They built a beautiful life together based on love and respect. And I know that Dad's memory will be a source of strength for my mom going forward. Dad has been one hell of a role model for me. He checks the boxes on a life well lived. What a gift he has given to me to be his son. I will use his memory as a source of strength and inspiration to move forward and upward, even though my heart currently aches. I've grown accustomed to your face, Dad. Thank you so much.
You ready? Okay. I'll now ask Marvin's daughter, Ellen, to come up and speak.
Oh, Dad would be so happy to see all of you. So, I guess I'm as emotional as you, Steve. Marvin called me the middle child, which means maybe I'm up Hello. Oh, how about that? Marvin called me the middle child, which maybe means I'm not quite as eloquent as my other siblings. I imagine that most children have a moment when they grow into seeing their father not just as a dad, but a person of the world. And I remember the exact moment that happened for me. I was no longer a little girl. I was 20. And I was sitting in the audience as Dad received a distinguished honor from the National Conference of Christians and Jews. In a flash, in a true flash, he was no longer my dad, but an esteemed and respected man. Someone who made a huge difference in the lives of so many. He was a man who was generous and accepting of everyone, regardless of their beliefs or their lifestyle. In that instant, in that flash, what he had been modeling to me since I was a young child became completely clear. And I vowed to learn all I could from him, from the amazing man that he was. I can only hope by the time I'm 90, Dad, I'll be even half the person you are. So what does the daughter of Marvelous Marvin, as we called him, learn or strive to learn? To be kind, loving, and supportive. We've heard this already today a couple of times. I think it bears repeating, and I've often heard from others who said how kind Marvin was to them. And though Dad didn't say I love you too often, except to Mom, very often to Mom, I always knew how much he cared about me, and as we say, how much he had my back. When I was having a hard time in college and was home visiting, he invited me to lie next to him, and he said, "Whatever you need, Ellen, I am here for you." He did not impose his opinion, but shared wisdom and stories so that I could choose for myself. What amazing parenting skills that was. And when I did something that Marvin might not have approved of, he didn't say a word. He remained quiet. Over the years, Dad became more nostalgic and spoke his appreciations to his family and friends, and he even said, "I love you," more often. To be honest and stand up for your beliefs. Dad spoke what he believed in, even if he thought it might ruffle a few feathers. He was clear about the difference he wanted to make in the world, and he acted in accordance with that. From fundraisers at the synagogue to all you've heard so far about the things he's done in his life, thank you, Stephen, Dad fought for what he believed was right and just. Always stay young at heart. At 90, Dad was ageless. He had friends of all ages, as many young as older, and they all flocked to him. He was often the center of attention, bringing laughter and excitement to those present. One of my favorite examples of that, which we've been rewatching on video this week, was at our daughter Emma's graduation from Indiana University in 2019. Marvin downloaded the IU fight song onto his phone, and with a huge childish smile on his face and body language we all know so well, he sang and conducted a group of 20 of Emma's friends in Indiana, our Indiana. Of course, he had to follow it up with a little Iowa Hawkeye song as well. To move whether it was what we affectionately called the Winnick walk, walking as fast as you can, using your entire body, playing tennis or ping pong, biking or dancing, Dad kept moving through life. Though his aging body didn't always cooperate, he did everything he could to keep upright on his own 2 feet, and he didn't like assistance in that department. Don't even try, right? Keep a keen mind. Dad was sharp and kept his mind active until the very last moment. And he would not have wanted it any other way. So we are grateful for that. Lifelong learning, reading, playing bridge, participating in group discussions were his lifeline. As a child, I remember that most dinners included Dad testing our knowledge. These tests included things like, how many songs can you name with the word moon in it? Can you guess all the ingredients on the back of this ketchup bottle? Or something more complicated, which would lead us to grab a host of world books and spread them across the dining room table. Humility and selflessness. Dad did his best and did not expect acknowledgement or reward. And when he believed he had not performed to par, he would also admit that. To love music and memories. Marvin was kind of a song and dance guy. Music, and particularly the memories it evoked, were so important to him. When singing a song, he'd report where he was when he first heard the song, who recorded it, when it was recorded, and when he and Mom had first danced to it. When Mom and Dad were moving from their Windsor Heights home over 40 years ago, he had had a health issue and was not strong enough to do much of the work of the move. I came home to help, and I found him sitting in his office with a stack of record albums in his lap. He was recording each one of his albums onto CDs and listening and singing along as he did so. He was not planning to move his turntable or his albums, and it was important to him to relive each piece of original music and the memories that went along with them. One birthday, we purchased Dad a karaoke machine, which adorned the bar just outside their bedroom in Rancho Mirage. Each morning, as he walked by on his way to get a cup of coffee, he couldn't help but stop to croon a Sinatra or show tune to start the day. We have that on video also. And to assure his music lived on, Dad gifted his albums to friends, children, and grandchildren. And finally, to commit for a lifetime. And Dad, I'm still learning this one from you, but what an amazing example. When Marvin committed to something, it was for life. Living in Des Moines, he lived here his whole life. His marriage to Robbie, his dear, dear friends, his career, and his religion. Because a tribute to Marvin would not be complete without a few, as we call them, Marvinisms. My sister Laura and I would like to share some sayings we heard from him over the years.
You can stay, but the noise has got to go.
Just decide already. Or, take your time, but hurry.
What do you think this is, a democracy?
And when it was your birthday? What do you think it is, your birthday or something?
That's not music. That's noise.
Chummed lily.
Hoy Tennessee.
Not so fast.
Miss Johnson.
You done it. Marvin, here's to you.
I'm not used to going last, and I think this has all been said, but I'm going to say it again. Hi, I'm Lori, daughter one. For the past 66 years, I've been a daddy's girl. It's an addiction I have never tried to break. I have spent my life being told how much I am like Dad. In fact, there has rarely been a conversation with Mom where the phrase, "you sound just like your father," has not been uttered. Here are the obvious similarities. Food. Dark meat, please. Lemon and apple. Absolutely no marshmallows. Chocolate is the only real food group. Family dinner should be on the table at 6:30. 2, games. We played anything and everything, but my earliest memories were after dinner was eaten and the dishes were done, he would get down on the floor, he would play Candyland, go fish, or war until bedtime. But he never let us win. You had to earn it. He didn't play down to us. The highlight of my life was in beating him in hearts for the first time. And Dan Richards was in that game as well. True highlight. And more recently, Mom, Dad, Martin, and I have been playing an online canasta every Sunday night. I don't know what we're going to do now. Number 3, we both like to bike, and I will carry the memories of our 2 Ragbri rides forever. 4, we liked the same stupid jokes. For instance, the one where the 2 old guys are sitting around the table playing gin rummy. The first guy says to the second one, "What did you do last night?" "We went to dinner." "Oh yeah, where did you go?" "It was a new restaurant. It was beautiful and the food was great." "So what is the name of this restaurant?" "Name? You want a name? Let me see. Let me think. Oh, I know. The flower. What's that flower? The red one with the thorns." Another guy says, "You mean a rose?" He says, "Yeah, that's the one." And with that, he yells into the kitchen, "Hey, Rose, what was the name of that restaurant we went to last night?" And of course, music. Standards, classical, and Broadway show tunes were the sounds of my youth. When we lived in our house, our tiny, teeny tiny house in West Des Moines, Iowa, we didn't have a lot of space or fancy furniture. Our kitchen was the size of a postage stamp. It didn't even have a built-in dishwasher. So as you can imagine, the buffet piece in the dining area was prime real estate. It could have been used to store any number of crucial household items. But of course, it was filled with his ever-growing collection of stereo equipment and LPs. I remember the countless hours dancing to exhaustion to Herb Alpert's Whipped Cream and Other Delicacies, Sergio Mendes, Frank, of course, Johnny Mathis, and Nat King Cole. And this is just an aside, but what? Oh, I'm sorry. This is just an aside, but recently I had Mom and Dad come to Minneapolis to see a version of Guys and Dolls, and when it ended, He was sobbing. He was in such a pool of tears. I had never seen him cry quite that hard. And I looked over, I said, Dad, what's the matter? And he says, I just love this music. So those are the obvious things, but there was so much more. He taught by example, and through the stories he would tell. He gave me a strong work ethic that included a head for business with a strong dose of fairness and morality. He showed me how to treat one's spouse, resulting in a marriage that lasted just 7 months shy of 70 years. He gave true meaning to the commandment of honoring your father and mother. He was always there for his children in every way. He made family vacations a priority, starting with Okoboji, hiking in Colorado, and of course, family vacations with the A. Winnicks, as in Marvin's older brother, Alan Winnick. He loved his grandchildren and adored his great-grandchildren and was so proud of their many accomplishments and celebrations. I'm going to give a shout out now to my daughter-in-law, Jamie, who can't be here because she is giving us a grandson tomorrow. He believed in friendships that never ended. When his good friend Sheldon died, they had actually been friends for over 85 years. And that is only one example. He had so many long and loyal friendships. Once you were in with Marvin, you were in for life. He was always harder on himself than on others. He could make excuses for anyone else's behavior, but the famous, "Oh, Marvin," was uttered whenever he disappointed himself. He gave me a love of religion and civic duty. Tifereth Israel was a second home for Mom and Dad. In the original sanctuary of my youth, the Winnick family was a constant, and we always sat center right, third row back from the front. In conclusion, I started this by declaring that I am a daddy's girl. And now I am my father's legacy. I love you, Dad, and we promise to take good care of Mom.
Thank you, Laura. I'm now going to invite Laura's husband, Marvin's son-in-law, Martin, to read a letter from one of Marvin's beloved friends, Rabbi Barry Citron.
As the rabbi said, the following was sent by Rabbi Barry Citron, a lifelong and dear friend of Marvin, who served as the rabbi at Tifereth Israel for 11 years. The address on the stationery has it as 1100 Carriers Building, 601 Locust. The name on the law office letterhead read, Brown, Winnick, Graves, Donnelly, and Baskerville. The date is October 11th, 1982. Marvin had sent the letter on behalf of Robbie, Laura, Ellen, Steve, and himself as I was marking the beginning of my 11th, and as things would have it, final year with this beloved community. A decade that will move the hearts of Phyllis and me and our children. The letter is devoted to recounting the broad range of ways we had connected over the previous 10 years. Losses of family members, joy-filled celebrations on so many levels, the exhilarating hours spent in dozens of study groups, High Holy Day and Shabbat services, and special highlights of this community in its celebrating Israel and the Jewish people. That 2-page letter had been carefully and lovingly preserved in our albums from our Des Moines years. And in it, Marvin enumerates with his characteristic generosity and eloquence what he viewed as my love for Tifereth community. Now it falls on to me to offer words of explanation for why. Actually, it only takes 2 words. Marvin Winnick.
In this sense, as the literary folks in Iowa City might say it, speaking of Marvin that way is synecdoche, a part that stands for a whole, a microcosm for this entire community, a remarkable assembly of women and men who so blessed our lives and the lives of those fortunate to be here in those years. In retrieving this letter was another precious document by its side, a running 28-page commentary of congregational history during those years. Here is just a tiny part of what is included for the years 1975 to 1977, the years Marvin was president of this congregation. Ground was broken, and the building in which the community now bids him farewell was about to be completed. That for the congregation's 75th anniversary, celebrated during Marvin's tenure, a woman, May Rovner, was called to the bema for the first time to recite the blessings in honoring the Torah. That the lunch study group, under Marvin's suggestion, undertook to read a new book by his one-time University of Iowa professor, world-renowned cultural historian George Massey. And with Marvin's encouragement and guidance, Phyllis and I began that year an annual visit to all of our young people who were studying in Iowa City. 4 discrete elements that encompass and underline Marvin's enduring love for study, commitment to the Iowa community, and dedication to his faith that he so lovingly honored and served. I first learned of the loss of our Marvin about 5:30 a.m. this past Thursday, when I fired up my computer and checked my inbox email. There was a note from Joy Rabinowitz Argamon, Rosalind and Sheldon's Israeli daughter. Since last October 7th, we have been receiving daily updates from Joy, and this one was intimately, achingly personal. It reads in part this way. Quite a difficult day for me as I received news early this morning of Marvin Winnick's passing yesterday in Palm Springs. He was about 6 weeks short of his 91st birthday. Marvin was my guest columnist on day 41, Thursday, November 16th. This is what I had to say about Marvin then. I've invited my father's lifelong best friend, Marvin Winnick, from Des Moines to say a few words. Sheldon and Marvin, now 90 plus, were best of friends from preschool until my dad died in July of 2020. That was an 85 plus year run or so. Countless gatherings growing up, and Marvin and his wife, Robbie, 89 plus, have turned into surrogate parents for me since my parents passed away 5 months apart in 2020. I love them both dearly, and their children too. I admit to feeling just like Joy, as I have lost my oldest friend, and sure is confident. Someone who always had our back, who helped us prepare for the contingencies that can frequently constrain life, who guided us with wisdom and skill to a sense of stability and assurance. In that 1982 letter, Marvin wrote, he concluded this way, I would like to thank you for being a special friend to me. It seems that we see many things in this world alike, and that we have a special connection to each other that does not have to be reaffirmed by actions or words. I hope this relationship will continue regardless of where either of us may live. After Phyllis had finished reading Joy's note that morning, and the two of us had spent the morning speaking in wistful remembrance of our love for both Robbie and Marvin, and the community they both embodied so fully, Phyllis sent off a note to Joy, given her highlighting the 85 years connection between Marvin and her father, Sheldon. Phyllis picked up that by sending along some lyrics from one of Israel's preeminent musicians, the late Naomi Shamir of Jerusalem of Gold fame. Here's how the line goes, and I'm going to do it in Hebrew, so I apologize if I miss it a little bit. Anashim tovim be'emtza chaderech, Anashim tovim me'od, Anashim Yodim et Chederach V'atem Eshar Le'etzod. And here's how she caught the spirit of those lyrics. We think of all the very good people we have met along our path, how good it was to have walked with them and learned from each of them, and they have made our life better forever. We are endlessly grateful to have had Marvin with Robbie by his side as we together have navigated these past 50 years. May memory of him bless this world forevermore.
Thank you. Before I ask you to rise for the El Malei Rachamim, for the memorial prayer for our beloved friend, Marvin Winnick, I'm going to give you a little bit of a logistical announcement so then we can seamlessly move through to the next thing that we need to do. Immediately following the El Malei Rachamim, the pallbearers will come up and walk alongside Marvin, and I will say a psalm behind him, and the family will walk behind me, and we will escort Marvin out. Then everybody can come back in and bundle themselves up, and it's going to be a little sloppy out in the cemetery, but we welcome anybody who wants to come and pay their final respects to Marvin, and also to help us bury him ourselves, as is our tradition. Non-Jews and Jews alike can take part in this act of chesed. Then afterwards there will be a meal of consolation here at the synagogue, and I thank the Women's League and all the other women who helped out to make a beautiful meal, no doubt, in honor of Marvin. There has already been an email that has been sent out to the Jewish community about Shiva, which will be available to you if you are not a member of the congregation by either calling our office or by finding one of your friends that is and asking. I don't give any information out on live stream because this is being recorded and can be watched by anybody at any time, but there is information, like I said, in the email. Let's see. I think that's it. I hope Marvin's memory is always for a blessing for each and every one of you. And may his stories and his wisdom and his love live on well, well beyond his years. Please rise for El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Amse Menucha Nachana Tachat, Kanfei Ashchina, V'ma'alot Kadoshim Utorim, Kizohar Harakia, Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Mordechai ben Eliezer v'Sara, Shehalach la'olamo, Began Eden Tehe Menuchato. Ana Bal Harachamim, Hastirehu Beseter Knafecha La'olamim, Utzro B'Yisroel Chaim et Nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, V'nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, the soul of Marvin Winnick, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul always be bound up in the bond of life, in the bond of love, in the bond of good memories. May he rest in peace always. Let us say, Amen.